Olá, bem-vindo ao canal Cripto Legendado. Inscreva-se e fique por dentro das notícias do mundo cripto. Saylor, da MicroStrategy, acredita que o Bitcoin atingiu seu ponto mais baixo e está agora em alta, com capital fluindo do resto do ecossistema de criptomoedas para o Bitcoin.
So you've got your clarity. Your clarity is Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the most secure network. It's the most secure asset. Everything else has got a black cloud hanging over it, and you're going to see a consistent flow of capital flowing from the rest of the crypto ecosystem to Bitcoin, and you're going to see a consistent flow of development effort flowing from the crypto ecosystem on top of the Bitcoin ecosystem.
So I'm, thinking about a couple of things pegged to the halving that's, happening next April. Now, typically we would see a run up in the price of Bitcoin going into that. And that would set off the next bull cycle. But, there are a couple of things that are fundamentally different this time around. The IRS is very involved in, wanting to know what your crypto investments are, taxing them. Institutional money, I imagine that some players are scared. I mean, yes, we are starting to get regulatory clarity, but I mean, there's a lot that's still unknown in terms of how federal regulators are going to target certain institutions. So, and when I think of institutional money, I think about that being a big part of the narrative around the last bull cycle. So, I mean, what happens next year? Are these headwinds going to affect what would have otherwise been a traditional cycle for Bitcoin, or do you not see that having any sort of impact on the run-up?
Yeah, I think the industry is going through growing pains. The bullish factors in favor of Bitcoin is if nearly all of the bad leverage has been squeezed out. Everyone in the business of shorting Bitcoin, rehypothecating Bitcoin, loaning Bitcoin, they've all been bankrupted. The remaining exchanges where you can short it are under massive amount of regulatory pressure, and if the regulators have their way, they would like to see all the Bitcoin derivatives markets offshore be eliminated. So I think Bitcoin's found the bottom. I think the leverage is out of it. I think we're on a bull run. I think bullishly, the FASB initiative to adopt fair value accounting is a very auspicious development. I think all of the migration of ordinals, inscriptions activity onto the Bitcoin blockchain is a very auspicious development. I think the halving will be very auspicious. And I think the fact that the average media journalist and average investor knows that Bitcoin is the one commodity that the SEC is not going to regulate is an auspicious development. So I think the way is clear for Bitcoin to rally from here. I would be very skeptical of all the other crypto investments.
Speaking of the futures market, whereas Bitcoin does seem to be firmly under the remit of the CFTC and thought of as a commodity, there's still this question around Ether. And so is the CME suddenly in violation of securities laws if for a lot of the futures contracts that they offer, if the SEC makes this call that it falls under their regulatory remit? It seems like a gray zone still.
I think there's a lot of discomfort within the regulators with regard to the circulation of all the crypto asset securities, the operation of all the crypto exchanges, and also the circulation of the cryptocurrencies, the stable coins. And they're sitting out there in bulk, circulating right now, and the regulators want to figure out how to clarify and rationalize that structure while doing the least amount of damage. And that's not easy.
Something I've been thinking about a lot and talking to a lot of people about is this idea of Operation Choke Point 2.0. So, following the fall of SVB, Silvergate, and signature banks, we saw that two of the most important payment networks that were helping with after hours payment settlement, weekend payment settlement, fall out. And I've been talking to a lot of crypto firms, and it sounds like they're just assuming that balance sheet risk overnight because there isn't really a suitable replacement. And I guess my larger question to you out of this is that we've seen a drop off in liquidity. And, in terms of price movements, that's a great thing when you have a bullish buy, because then you can see these much wider swings in the price of Bitcoin. But overall, it's not a good thing if you can't on-ramp fiat into the ecosystem.
I think most of the liquidity was being delivered by people rehypothecating and shorting Bitcoin. And so as the Alamedas and the Genesis and all the exchanges and all the other altcoins exit the market, some of the liquidity dries up, but that's actually bullish for Bitcoin. I think it's pretty clear from all the regulatory moves with regard to the banks and the stable coins that the regulators simply do not want a non-KYC settlement network operating in US dollars, either in the form of a stable coin, or operating on a DeFi network, or operating on a crypto network, or operating through a US banking network. All of those are being rejected with prejudice. And the conclusion you come to is the capital that's sitting in stable coins and the capital that's sitting on crypto exchanges and crypto tokens is going to have to exit, but it won't exit through a fiat off-ramp or a bank. It's going to get traded into Bitcoin, and it's going to get withdrawn from the exchanges.
You know, I think of the U.S. as a jurisdiction for crypto generally, Bitcoin in particular. There are so many conversations now about, companies coming out to say that they're exploring being based elsewhere, not because they're going to a, place with very lax rules. In fact, a lot of people are bullish on the UK, which has very stringent rules around the digital asset market. But what does it mean if a lot of companies begin, crypto-focused companies and exchanges and others in the industry leave the United States? Is that is that bad for the United States? Is that bad for Bitcoin? What does that mean if the U.S. is no longer friendly to this industry?
I don't think there's any place for them to go. People say the industry's moving offshore. I don't think there's going to be any jurisdiction with large pools of capital that's going to be more permissive than in the United States. So I think what that means is all those practices are going to float into the gray market at best, where there's 5% as much capital. And the legitimate business in Western Europe, the United States, Singapore, Japan, is going to be rebuilt on a Bitcoin base layer using Lightning or using other Bitcoin protocols. And if it's not that, it must absolutely be an asset without an issuer, truly decentralized, designated as a commodity by the regulators. If you can't build a crypto application on top of a commodity network decentralized, I don't think there's a future for it in the developed world.